Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned into Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on NBC News Radio, KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, iTunes, Audible, and more. Because this is a show about hope and happiness, and I bring you good news to balance out all the bad news that is so readily available. And today is a very special day as we look to celebrate Veterans Day in a time where we really, really want to appreciate those who are laying their lives on the line all around the world, veterans who are returning, those who are working. And so I have a very special show for you today. And just to give you a little background, 2020 was the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, the war to end all wars. Although current events and the pandemic kept many from celebrating the anniversary, the unique relationship between Bob Hope and the greatest generation by the way of the USO is too important to go unrecognized. Never before has it been as important as it is now to remember and pay homage to our veterans and today's members of the armed services. Dear Bob Hope's Wartime Correspondence with the G.I.s of World War II by Martha Bolton and Bob Hope's daughter, Linda Hope, is a time capsule that reveals exactly how important Hope's remarkable service was to the fighting men and women of World War II. The authors have collected personal letters, postcards, packages, and more sent back and forth among Hope and the troops and their loved ones back home. Martha Bolton, my guest today, was the first woman staff writer for Bob Hope, helping to write his television specials, personal appearances, and military shows for approximately 15 years. She's an Emmy-nominated writer and author of 88 books of humor and inspiration. We have to talk about that number. She has received nominations for a Dove Award, WGA Award, a Golden Scroll Merit Award for fiction. Linda Hope, her writing source partner, is the eldest daughter of Bob and Dolores Hope. She's the producer of the Emmy Award-winning TV special Bob Hope, The First 90 Years. She also wrote My Life in Jokes, a collection of jokes honoring her father's 100th birthday. Linda produced his TV shows for over 20 years, ran Hope Enterprises, and spent the last 2 decades perpetuating her father's legacy. These two glorious women have put this memoir-type reflection piece together that is now, I think it won several awards. I'll let Martha tell us how many awards it's already won. Please welcome to my studio, Martha Bolton.
Well, it's great to be on your show.
And wow, you've spent some time with an iconic man, not just spending time with him, but writing for him, writing with him. Wow. That's all I can say. So let me go to my first question that I usually ask people, which is, when you were a kid, did you ever think that this is what you would be doing with your life?
I always knew I would be a writer, but I never knew it would be a career. It would just be a hobby. I've been writing since I was 9, and I wrote a little book called No Fun Being Young, about being the youngest of 5. And then in my teens, I wrote poetry, and I taped the poems on the wall by my bed, and I must have had like 35 on there. I also collected jokes in this little, I'd write them on 3x5 cards and put them in this little holder. And so I always knew I would write. And I entered a cartoon gag writing contest when I was 14, and that got printed in the paper, which just thrilled me to no end. And then I started. I became a church secretary. Okay. You see a lot of humor And so I would write about that. I would write little tidbits in the newsletter. I would roast the pastor, like at the Friars Club roast. And then I got a reputation for doing that sort of thing. And friends would call for me to roast their bosses or their pastors. So that's where I started writing humor. And again, I just thought it would be a hobby and never knew that it would turn into a career until I got encouragement to start sending my jokes out to comedians. And so I started doing that, and lo and behold, they started buying, and I was shocked and thrilled, and then little by little, it just one step after another, and I can turn around now and look where it took me.
How did Bob Hope find you?
Well, I started writing for different comedians, and I always wanted to get into script writing for television. I got a lot of encouragement. People would tell me, you should be writing for television. And again, I didn't really know that that's where my path was going to go, but I thought, well, I'll try it. And I had read this book by a gentleman named Gene Parrott, who was a writer for the Carol Burnett Show and also the creative consultant for Mama's Family. So I just wrote him a nice letter because he wrote for Phyllis Diller. I wrote for Phyllis Diller. He used to roast his boss at work, and I used to write roast. So we had this in common. So I thought, well, I'll write him and just tell him I enjoyed his book. I didn't ask for anything. I just wrote him a kind of a fan letter. And so he contacted me and invited me down to see a taping of Mama's Family. And so I went down and with my husband, and then the three of us went out to eat afterwards across the street from NBC. And I had taken my scrapbook of all my writings. I had jokes in there. I had different magazine articles that I had written. At the time, I was also writing a newspaper column, so I had all of those in there. So I made this poor man go through this scrapbook, and he was so gracious. And he loved my work and said I should be writing for Hollywood. So he...
How old were you at this point?
Probably my late 20s, I guess. By then, I had been writing already a decade of writing for the comedians, and that I had, Phyllis Diller, and I had a few others that I was writing for, and then also writing the roast. So probably 28, 29, something like that, I think. And so then he encouraged me to write a spec script for Mama's Family. And at the time, I didn't have a typewriter that was working, so I didn't want to lose any time. So for a quarter, for 20 minutes, I went down to the local library and just kept feeding it quarters while I wrote out 2 spec scripts for this show. And I got it to Gene, and he loved them. And then he got it to Ed Simmons, who was the producer. And I got a call from Ed. He told me he loved my work and that he was going to call me in to pitch some show ideas the next season. So I was just so excited. And as what happens in Hollywood, the show got canceled. It got picked up later, but at that point in time, they didn't pick it up for the new season. So he told me the bad news, which just, depressed me. You're up on top, and then you have this opportunity, and then it doesn't come through. But Gene also happened to be a writer for Bob Hope. So he told me, well, why don't you try writing for him? He gave me an assignment. I wrote some jokes. He got it to Bob. And then I waited to hear back. And then one night, late at night, it was pretty late. I think it was, after 11, somewhere around in there, maybe close to midnight. I don't remember. But the phone rang, and it was Bob Hope. And he told me he loved my work and just continued to call me. He gave me some more assignments that night and then continued to call. And then I ended up going on staff. and was his first woman staff writer.
That is so cool. So you're a pioneer on top of that.
Yes, yeah. And it all came from a disappointment, which I find pretty fascinating about life, is sometimes you think it's the end of something and it's just the beginning of something else better.
There, no truer words were ever spoken by a writer, for sure. Because if you had gotten that job that you really wanted, that you were so disappointed for, you probably never would have ended up writing with Bob Hope. So
exactly.
How cool is that? How cool is that? And the reason why I said 88, if you have 88 publications, that's the reason why I ended up with you as a guest, because I'm on a happy 88 mission.
Oh,
so
really?
88. Yes, I am on 88 million more happy people in the next 8 years. That's been my mission now.
Oh, that's a great mission.
Thank you. Since this book came out and went number 1, called 8 Ways to Happiness.
That's great.
So what are the chances that you have 88 publications? You're on the show with someone who's on an 88 mission. I love that. I love it. Yes. It just shows how synchronous everything is and how beautiful the world is. And so this wonderful book, I guess it's a collection. It has, I'm guessing, pictures, letters. Tell me about this amazing piece of work.
It has pictures. It has quotes from Bob, of course, but the main thing that it has is these letters back and forth between Bob and the G.I.s of World War II. And they are fascinating. They, number one, it's not a fan celebrity letter at all. These soldiers would write to him. It would be, dear pal, dear buddy, dear dad. They were so close. They would tell him things that they wouldn't tell their family. He would joke around with them. So it was this real, this actor who did buddy movies. He was their buddy. He just took them in, and they could write him even when they didn't know where he lived. He had, at the height of the war, he was receiving 38,000 letters a week, which is incredible. And he did his best to answer as many of them as possible, if not all of them. If anybody could answer all of them, it would have been Bob Hope, because he was that dedicated. But who knows if it's humanly possible. But he would receive these letters, and a lot of them were not even addressed correctly. It would say, to Bob, location doubtful, but probably somewhere near Hollywood, California. And that would be the address. And the postman would get it to him. So it's pretty incredible. And there's all sorts of letters in different ways that they've addressed them, and which is fascinating. And some of those the envelopes are in the book as well. And it's just this camaraderie that existed between him and the G.I.s that we used to see at NBC when he would tape his shows, and a veteran would come up and greet him afterwards. And you knew there was a bond there that was pretty strong. But until I started working on this book, and Linda grew up with the letters, she would see them in the boxes at the house, and she even did a high school paper on them. Marjorie Hughes, who was his secretary at the time, she kept them, these thousands and thousands and thousands of letters on the old onion skin paper, a lot of them.
Do you by any chance have a short example of a letter that you like, that you could read? That would be so awesome.
There's so many that are just, they run the gamut of funny and the ones that you'll just have to have tissue on hand. Hi, friend. I remember the first night I spent on Iwo Jima. I said my prayers and I imagined I could see my little girl getting into bed, even though the Japanese were hitting us with their mortars. At this time, I was dug in beside the body of a buddy of mine, Gunny Sergeant J. Basilone. But all I could think of was home. Later on in the operation, I came across a fellow from Indianapolis. He had been hit by mortar fragments. While I was dressing his wounds, of which there were many, also giving him plasma, believe it or not, he was talking about home. When we put him aboard a track to evacuate him, he said, well, at least I'm headed for home. This story is true, Bob. I guess he is home by now. I have been transferred to the 2nd Division now and sure hope to get home soon. That's all for now, only I hope people back home hold up their end of the bargain as good as we held up ours. One of your fans, Harry. They're very moving. Another thing that Bob did is when he was performing, one of the if one soldier or more came up to him, and it was usually a crowd of them, and if they could slip their mother's phone number to him, then when he got home, he would take the time as soon as he got home to call personally each of those moms and tell them that he had seen their son or daughter and that they were doing well, even if sometimes he may have seen them in a hospital or whatnot, and they asked him not to mention that part, but he would personally call their moms.
That is so beautiful. And if you're wondering who I'm talking to today, I have Martha Bolton in studio with me. She is the co-writer or writer of Bob Hope's memoirs, which captured the correspondence which she's sharing with us between soldiers on the line and himself, and just sharing with us a lot of inside info about Bob. We'll be back with more of this wonderful correspondence, as well as Martha Bolton on Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome back. You are tuned into Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on CNBC, NBC News Radio, KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere, including my YouTube channel, where you'll get all 569 consecutive shows, but who's counting, here on the station that leaves no listener behind. And you'll also, if you free subscribe to my YouTube channel, you will get an alert every morning at 8 a.m. to tune in to this show about hope and happiness. And today's guest is Martha Bolton. You may not know her name, but you certainly know who she worked with for 15 years, Bob Hope. What an icon, what a legend, what a man who loved his country and loved those who served us overseas. World War II, the stories and the letters that he wrote back and forth with these GIs have been lovingly captured in a wonderful document that has now won awards. So Martha, tell me how many awards it's already won. I know that there's more than one. And rightfully so.
Oh, right now, I think it's won at least two. And they were the Christian Market Book of the Year and for 2021, and also Memoir of the Year for 2021. And we're waiting to hear on a few others that it's been entered into. So it's getting very well received and just a lot of good comments about it. So we couldn't.
And how does that make you feel?
Oh, thrilled. All those 3 o'clock in the morning writing sessions were worth it. And going through that was the hardest part of the book, was going through each letter and deciding which ones go in the book. And we wanted to have this emotional roller coaster that we would take the reader on, to where the serious ones about their mom or missing their sweetheart, those are all together. Or Christmas, those are together. Their complaints about the conditions, those are together. The funny ones, and one I remember, one soldier, because they would send him things. They would send him souvenirs from where he was at, where they were at. And so one soldier shaved off his goatee and mailed it to Bob. And can you imagine the secretary when she opened that?
No.
He just did it, for a joke, because they would joke with him, because he would joke with them each time he'd go there, and he'd be with all the soldiers, not only on stage and at the event, he would hang around with them. So they had this joking back and forth relationship as brothers, really. But so that's how we organized the book. So it takes you from crying to laughing, and just by the end, you'll be amazed at how much this one man accomplished in life and how much joy he brought to other people. And he saw life as this amazing opportunity to do good and to spread hope. And he brought as many in the world along as possible to take that journey with him.
Well, isn't it interesting that his name is Bob Hope, right? Now that is his real name.
Exactly.
Right? It's not a show name. He was born Bob Hope. And here his work, his purpose, his mission in life is to inspire hope. And he did that for how many years? 100 years?
100.
So
he made it to 100. And he started young. He was entertaining when he was a young kid. So he just was made for the stage and made to spread hope. Now, when he was born, Leslie Towns Hope, that was his birth name. And then he changed his first name because he said it got him, kids would,
tease him
and whatnot. So he changed that to later on in life. Someone suggested that he have a more chummier name. It would help him in show business. And so he picked Bob, and it sure worked.
Just missed that part. Could you do that one more time? He
picked Bob.
Suggested that he changed his name. Yeah. How did he pick Bob?
Yeah. This later on in life, this gentleman had suggested that he pick a more chummier name for show business. And so he picked Bob, and it sure worked.
It absolutely did. What a wonderful background I didn't know about. We'll be back with more on Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome back. You are tuned into Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on CNBC, NBC News Radio, KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere. And today's guest is Martha Bolton. You may not know her name, but you certainly know who she worked with for 15 years, Bob Hope. Anything else that we don't know? You know how sometimes people who are in the news or celebrities, they're one way in front of the camera and then another way outside of the camera. So from your 15 years of working so closely with him, is there, what are your impressions?
Well, that's the thing about Bob, is the same person that you saw in the dressing room getting ready to go on to stage was the same person that went on to stage, welcomed the audience, and the same person that did his show, and the same person that walked off his show and then came back to the dressing room. He was always the same person. And he just loved what he did. It's a real testament to the saying, do what you love and you'll be happy the rest of your life as far as a career or job. And that's what he did. His job was entertaining people, and he did it 24/7. He was just always ready to, with a quip or a joke or whatever, he could get up and just go stand on stage and MC a show. He was that talented, and I believe he had photographic memory, because we would be on the side of the stage at the shows, and he would ask us for new lines or something broke in the news, and so he'd want to talk about it. And so we'd quickly write out some jokes, and then we'd hand it to him, and he would glance down, look at the jokes, and then he'd go out on stage and do them. Which is incredible. And this was just going on stage. This wasn't with cue cards or anything. He would just walk out, add those to the monologue that was prepared, and he'd just start with whatever was hot in the news right then and there. And then also, if you look at the old tapes from World War II, when he was entertaining the troops, there are no scripts. I mean, they were written ahead of time, but he read them, and then he would go out on stage. He's not holding anything usually, and no cue cards, and he would just joke after joke after joke and just entertain on the stage. It was incredible. And how do you do that if you don't have a photographic memory? I don't understand how that could happen, but it was pretty amazing that way. And unless you were backstage watching it, you didn't know, people don't know that he did that he was capable of that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because they were your jokes. Like, you wrote them all. He took one look at them. It's not like they were his jokes, and of course he would remember them. Oh. So here's a funny, weird question, just as a writer myself, and coming up, I love being creative and I play with words, and I think I'm funny. The best thing about my divorce, my husband told me every day I wasn't funny. So the best thing for me about divorce is I own my funny now. I think I'm funny. And it's not just I'm funny looking, but I actually think I'm funny. But as a writer, and as a writer of jokes and things that you created, does it ever irk you at all that they are always attributed to someone else? I mean, for you, maybe Bob Hope is the best person to attribute it to, that it was their joke. But as a writer, do you ever feel a little that you didn't get enough credit? I mean, that's me, because I'm not evolved here.
I think I'm okay with it, because I tend to be the basic part of me is shy. So I have real no desire to become that comedian, that center of attention, all of that. I'm very comfortable behind the typewriter. I love what I do. And I do sometimes speak about my career and that sort of thing. But I'm happy that they're doing it. And when I hear the laughter or the applause of the audience, I take part of that for myself. I'm just thrilled about it, and love the feedback. He would call if you wrote a joke that played especially well, he'd call you up and tell you, and that, I just love that. That here's Bob Hope on the phone telling me that something I wrote really played well. So it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, I can't. I'm just thrilled when people like my work.
I don't think it's just anybody that would do that. I can think of many comedians who probably don't pick up the phone and thank their writer for the great material. And that's funny. That's why I've always been curious about that relationship. So, when people call people funny, it's like, yeah, but you don't write your own jokes. Are you really that funny? How can you be a comedian if you're not writing your own jokes?
He was funny himself, as so if we were ever, when we were gathered around the table and going through a script or whatever we were doing, he would put out a lot of jokes and on us, and you never wanted to get in a competition of wits with Bob Hope. So he always made sure he won in a good way. I mean, these were jokes, and one would top the other and top the other. And some of the veteran writers that had been with him for years, they'd get into the competition, and it was fun to watch. Oh my goodness. I wish they had tape recorded some of that, but pretty.
I absolutely do too. I wish they had tape recorded that. I would have loved to have listened, because to me, laughter is my favorite sound in life. I call it cardio for my soul. And I can imagine the times that you were laughing uncontrollably to the point, when you don't even remember what you were laughing at, or you have to pee, because it's just so funny. I would have loved to have traded spots with you. But
and the crowd that he hung around the best of the best. And you'd go to parties, and the people that would be there, or even at the show tapings, he had such great friends, and they were all legendary comedians.
Like
but
who?
He had such great friends from the vaudeville times and the movies and whatnot. They would just, even if they weren't on the show, they would pop in and just be there. And then if he had to go to the dressing room, they'd go walk out on stage and, do 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever for the audience. It was an amazing atmosphere to work in.
Name some of those names.
Oh,
like who?
Lucille Ball, George Burns, Danny Thomas, just Milton Berle. I mean, all of them, all of the legends, all of these legends that just would red buttons. Just so many. I mean, you look at the list that he would have on his shows, and just hundreds of people that you'd read about. You grew up watching television with them on it, and then there you were. They're 5 feet in front of you, or you go to the dressing room to have a line change, and they're sitting on the sofa waiting for you to deliver the lines that the writers had come up with, and you have to tell them what you came up with. And these are legends, plus Bob Hope sitting there in the makeup chair, and you're sitting there waiting to, have to put this joke out. So, but they were so gracious. Those people that grew up on vaudeville and had this huge careers in show business, they were so gracious and so kind and funny to boot. But to watch them all interact, which they would do when they were taping, they'd get up on stage and they'd whisper something to each other, or they'd just joke around. And it was amazing to watch them all joke around. And Jonathan Ramsey's another one, Leslie Nielsen. They were just fun.
My favorite George Burns joke is when he turned 90, someone interviewing him said, "So do you still have sex?" And George Burns says, "That would be like shooting pool with a rope."
Yeah, my favorite line of George's is someone asked him when he was going to retire, and he said, "I can't retire. Who'd support my mom and dad?" And he was, at that time, was 80 or 90, I forgot, but that's another one. He made it to 100 too. I think there's something about humor and longevity that needs to be studied at length.
Well, I love that saying. You do not stop laughing when you grow old. You grow old because you stop laughing. And if this episode doesn't prove that, I don't know what else will. That's so absolutely true. So let me ask you a different question about you and what it was like being the first female writer for Bob Hope on staff with all these veteran guys, right? And being in Hollywood, in humor, funny, this male dominated, you didn't have Aquafina, you didn't have, all of these women comedians, Roseanne Barr. I'm going to take Roseanne Barr out of there. So you didn't have female comedians, Ellen. So I can't use Ellen either because she's in trouble. Oh my God, that's so hilarious. So what was it like? You didn't have, this day and age, we have a lot more female writers, comedians, but you were a pioneer. What was that like? Was there inappropriateness?
Bob was always so gracious about that. If it ever started to get that way, he because there was one phone call I remember being there, and we were all sitting there, and the person on the other end of the line, I don't know what they said, but he said, I can't tell that, we've got a lady here. So he just was very protective and very nice. And the guys were as well very protective and encouraging. They would watch out for me. If I made sure I had a ride home, or if we were walking across the street, they were all really gracious. So, they just were really kind that way, very mannerly. And then also they pushed me ahead. Like I said, I tended to hold myself back and I was more shy. So if we were going to go down to his dressing room, they'd go, "Come on, Martha, you go with us," and kind of lead me down there. And I'm, shaking. And they just they made me grow and would give me, just as, I got all the assignments as everybody else got. I got all the, they just included me. I never felt like I was left out, anything like that. They included me, they brought me along, and they were so encouraging. We'd call each other and tell whatever jokes we had turned in, and we'd bounce them off of each other. So that was that. Oh, talk about laughing. We'd laugh on the phone all the time, but it got us into the mood to write. You stayed in that mood, because he'd call every day, just about a lot of times. And it was every day. Okay, what's the assignment today? And then sometimes if they would call and tell you what they wrote, now you had a hard time writing because your brain says you can't top that joke, whatever it was they just told you. So it could stifle you a bit, but we still communicate to this day. I wrote a book with one of them, with Jane Parrott. We've written books together and our magazine articles. And we've stayed good friends. We're the best of friends, and they're just wonderful.
So you got a kind of support that maybe a lot of women who were pioneers didn't get necessarily. So it sounds like, yeah, and largely because of Bob Hope and the environment that he nurtured. The environment, corporate culture.
They were all so gracious. I did have one incident where I had to go down to one of the actors' rooms to hand them the line changes in the script, and they had me do that. But the actor thought that I was there to repair his wardrobe. That I was from wardrobe. So that was pretty funny. But
yeah, little stereotyping there. All right, so here's another. I don't know if you want to answer this question, but I would love to know your views about what's going on now, because Dave Chappelle getting into trouble, Ellen getting into trouble, many people complaining that they just can't laugh about anything anymore and it's just a joke, and what's the big deal with calling black people black, or black trans, and making fun of people. We've been making fun of people for a long time. Jokes are funny. I was in the middle of this protest, literally in the middle, saying, Black Lives Matter and diversity matters and prejudice is wrong. And then jokes are funny. We love Dave. Dave is funny. Take a joke. Don't be so serious. So this seems to be the sign of the times, where you do have a very important voice saying, can you be funny without making fun of people? Right? Especially diversity. Or do you, and the other side saying, no, you everybody's too serious, and we have to be able to laugh at ourselves and laugh at other people. People are way too serious. What's your take on all of that?
Well, what we would do with Bob is, if something happened in the news, which during the time that I was with him, several things happened, and there's a timing to when you can start laughing about it. And we would always follow his judgment and just the judgment of society. When something bad happens, and there was always that debate of like, when is the Tonight Show going to start joking about it, or when is this? And you have to be really, really careful, because if it's a volatile time and, people can get hurt, that's not what comedy's about. You want comedy to where the more people in the audience that are laughing, the better. And therefore a while, comedy started getting more mean, and taking on people that couldn't answer back for themselves because this person had the microphone and they're at home someplace, and then they would take them on. And, I don't think meanness belongs in comedy. I think, especially like in roasting someone, the old roasts used to come from a place of respect, a place of love. Foremost, that was first and foremost. And if it got to where it was hurtful, and if you have, I don't know if this ever happened, but I'm sure it happens at amateur roasts for sure. But if the person of honor leaves in tears, well, you haven't honored them. So there has to be some judgment made before the joke that you put on paper goes up on the stage and somebody gets hurt. So I love to laugh, but you don't want to feel guilty that you laughed at something that, it just that where somebody got hurt, I just think there could be a more kindness and understanding of where everybody's coming from, and a little more carefulness of where the comedy, where you go to get the comedy. And what we would do sometimes too, there were topics that you may not be able to make jokes about, that topic, but you could go get away from it. You could take 5 or 10 steps away from it, and then now instead of talking about this, you're talking about a peripheral topic that has to do with that. But, like if it's something that happens in the news, well, you're over here talking about all the cameras that are there, or, you're taking a different take on it to where you're getting away from what's really raw, hurtfulness raw, and that somebody could get hurt with. And you're going to this tamer place that you could write just as good a jokes over here. And I find too that self-deprecation humor is the safest because you can it's all on yourself. So if you stay with yourself, then you're the only one that's going to get depressed over it. So
Right.
stay with yourself whenever you can.
Great answer. Great answer. Where do we get Dear Bob?
You can get it at the publishing house, University Press of Mississippi. You can get it from the Bob Hope Foundation website, just bobhope.org. And you can get it from all of the internet bookstores, the brick and mortar bookstores. Anyone can order it, and it should be available. And I hope they get it and enjoy it.
Wonderful. I just put it on the ticker tape so you can go look at that website. The last question that I always ask my guests is, to who or what are you most grateful for? To who or what are you most grateful for?
Well, definitely I am most grateful for my family, and got 3 kids and about 10 a team full of grandkids, and just very, very thankful this November for them. And as always, that just Bob Hope for being who he was, and such an example. And he changed my life. I mean, when that phone call changed my life and sent me on a trajectory that I am so thankful to him for that.
That's beautiful. Now, I forgot to ask you, how did the idea of putting this together come about, and how did you end up working with Linda?
Well, Linda had produced a lot of his shows. And so she had grew up with the books, with the boxes of the letters, and ended up writing a school paper on them as well. I came across them when we were working on a project. And so I talked with Bob. This was back when Bob was alive. And I talked with him and asked him if he had ever thought about putting them in a book. And he thought it was a great idea, but they were so close to his heart, he wasn't sure that he could get through it. He said to talk to Linda, because she had, like I said, grew up with them and was very familiar with them as well. So we talked, started having meetings, and started working on the book. And then what happens, you get on other projects, and then you don't get back to it right away, and you want to, but then we kept, the Bob's schedule was always so busy. So what happened was that Bob passed away, and then I didn't know where the book stood, but a few years ago, she contacted me and said, do you want to get back on that book? And I was so thrilled, because I had all this work already done. And then also, I wanted it to get out there, because I found the letters were so moving and so it shared. We knew that Bob Hope had the love for the G.I.s, but until I went through these letters, I had no idea the depth of that love and the depth of that respect. And I wanted the world to know that, and so did Linda. So we started working on it again, and it was set to come out in 2020, but because of COVID, it didn't. But it came out when it was supposed to come out, because it came out in March, and the world could sure use a lot of hope right now. Yes, and for sure. Bob was always known for his timing, and I think he's still doing it, because he timed it perfectly, and it's out now, and we'll give your listeners a real dose of hope.
Sounds like it's something that every veteran should be picking up for sure, to get some hope and inspiration and comfort from it.
It's a love letter to veterans for sure.
Today's Asian Oprah giveaway, Martha Bolton is kind enough to offer a copy of Dear Bob, Bob Hope's Wartime Correspondence with the G.I.s of World War II. The first one to put Bob Hope, emphasis on hope, in the subject line and contact me will get a copy of this fabulous emotionally beautiful, hopeful book that has just come out. So get your copy. If you don't win it, go to www.bobhope.org. And thank you so much, Martha, for being a guest on my show. I just am delighted that I got to meet you, someone who spent so much time with a legend and certainly an inspiration, who left a legacy of hope. This is Dr. Marissa reporting live from my living room during the pandemic, reminding you that it's all about balance, peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace. And remember, have the best day ever. Oh, and actually have the best Veterans Day ever. Thanks again to all who serve our country. Peace in, peace out.